beaming across the eastern townships from the heart of Brome-Missisquoi. This is 99.1 CITI.
Hello, this is The Alternatives. You have choices. I'm your host, Ilya Kavoukas, and this show is brought to you by the Sunshine Center in Sutton. We're a holistic health center offering massage and acupuncture and other courses like yoga and qigong. And we have a wonderful song circle that we get to sing, learn some songs, and then we do some improv. And we have all kinds of neat stuff going on at the center. This show is our way of getting out into the community and meeting people and sharing with you, the listeners, all the good things that are being offered here in the townships. And we interview these therapists and teachers. And today I have Shannon Brown back from our last interview. Hello, Shannon.
Hello, Ilya.
So glad to have you back. Thank you so much. I love the last show we did together, and it was just not enough. 28 minutes wasn't enough. Glad to have you back.
Yeah, thank you. I know there's just so much to talk about. So.
Yeah, we talked about doing art therapy through mandalas, and we talked about journaling and the different ways of journaling and all the good things about that. And today I would love to share with you and to talk with you and for you to share with us about shamanism, because you were telling me you did 2 years, you studied that, and you use it in some of your workshops. So what would you like to tell our listeners about shamanism? Where does it come from? Everything.
Well, shamanism is fascinating because it's one of the oldest healing traditions. If you look at Aboriginal communities and cultures around the world, there are still people practicing shamanism, and these are ancient healing techniques. And they work a lot with the energy systems of our bodies. And the first thing that I found so fascinating with shamanism, when I first started learning, we were talking about the chakra systems. And the work that I'm doing, the shamanic healing training that I'm taking, this really comes from sort of a South American place. A lot of the teachings that my teacher has learned come from South America. So I was confused at first because I thought, if we're looking at chakras, aren't chakras from India? Because that was my original idea. Mm-hmm. And isn't that where chakras are seen, in India? Mm-hmm. And then somebody pointed out to me, well, if it's in the body and you can see it, why wouldn't it be that people in South America can see this as well as people in India?
Yeah, so they might have had another word for it. Did they use the word chakra? No, they used...
Well, they're energy systems of the body.
That's right.
And so for me, what that did was it made me realize that these are vastly different cultures who developed for millennia separately. And yet they still see things that in our day-to-day living, most people don't see or even understand.
That's right.
So
it's a universal truth then.
Yeah.
If they're across the continent, across the oceans in thousands of years, and they have the same system, then must be a universal truth to it.
That's right. And what it reminds us is that just because we can see things doesn't mean that when you can't see with your eyes, something doesn't exist.
True. Good point.
So I love thinking about that as a first kind of place to start with shamanism. But when you have a shamanic healing session, I could walk you through kind of what happens.
Great.
One of the first things that happens is that sacred space is created. And what that does is it creates a place for you and the client to really feel safe. And I think that's very important because when we're dealing with deep health issues, we want to know that we're in a situation that we can trust the person that we're working, that's working on us. Let's say if you're a client, you can really trust this place that you're going to, because when we work in this way, the person is accessing really deep places within themselves. So often somebody could come to a shamanic practitioner and have issues with self-worth or have issues with getting into a lot of accidents or something like this. So we might ask that person to think back to when they were a child and if they had had any issues or traumatic experiences. And so when you go to those places, you want to make sure that you're feeling very safe.
Mm-hmm.
So
because you're feeling very vulnerable.
Absolutely. And so when we create sacred space, we do something called calling in the directions. And there's 7 directions to call in. There's the east, the south, the west, and the north, the as above and the so below, and the center. So once again, we're going back to this sort of mandala theme, and the mandala being this sort of sacred circle. And we look at it as something called a medicine wheel. So the medicine wheel is based on those directions. So we call in the directions, and each direction has a corresponding element, a world that it represents, and different energies that it represents. And often there's even an animal that represents that direction. So we call in those directions. We use something called sage smudge. And what sage...
Clean the negative energy.
That's right. And sage is used in many cultures. Even incense. I mean, the use of incense, even in Christianity, we use incense. I was just visiting my aunt last weekend at an Anglican church, and there they are walking with incense.
So true.
So to shift the energy and to bring it into sacred space, we use all the senses. So we would use a sage smudge to get rid of the negative energies. We would call in the directions. We would call in each other's, if I was the practitioner, I would call in my higher self, my helping spirits, anything that I can call in that will give me strength, groundedness, integrity in the situation, in the ceremony. And so this healing session is looked at almost like a ceremony. So it's not just a visit to the doctor. And these ceremonies can go on for some time. So would you like me to talk about some of the things that we do after that?
Absolutely.
All right. So let's say somebody came with a problem of having accidents. So they're sort of off balance, they're tripping, they hurt themselves, they broke their arm, something along this line. You might be getting a message from the universe or from your unconscious that you need to slow down or you need to pay more attention. But there might be a deeper issue, maybe something that happened in your past, something traumatic. That's reoccurring now to sort of remind you that it's time to deal with this issue. So the main treatment modality of a shamanic practitioner is something called a soul retrieval. Now, to get to the soul retrieval, you would probably want to visit with your shamanic healer a couple of times. You would do some other types of healing ceremonies. One is called cord cutting. But if we were to do the soul retrieval, basically, the premise of the soul retrieval is that in our lives, and this is across the board here, we all have traumatic experiences. Birth is a traumatic experience for a baby. Going from that warm, watery, comfortable place into this bright lights, cold...
screaming people.
Even just thinking about it makes me nervous. So what we want to do is we want to address some of those early experiences. And often